What is up, guys? Unfortunately, my water pump has failed for like the fourth time since I've owned my pickup. Apparently just all of the replacement parts on the market are garbage, so I'm getting a little bit of practice in at this point. Anyway, I'm gonna replace the water pump. Should be a pretty simple deal, and I figured I'd make a video on it, show you how really easy it is. So anyway, let's get right into it. All right, we're gonna start off with pulling the lower coolant hose. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Maybe, kind of. Oh god. Definitely works better with two hands. Anyway, super easy. You get the point. Alright, so I let it sit outside and run, warm up a little bit, trying to get it to push some of the coolant out. The gauge started to come up, and it actually got to where it started going back down. So I knew the pump was no longer pushing coolant at that point. So I was like, whatever, I'll just get it inside and park it before I just thermo nuke the engine, because I don't have it all hooked up right. But anyway, still sitting here draining a little bit. Get as much of this out of there as I can, but anyway, start tearing it apart. All right, so I don't actually have to do this, but just from personal experience, makes it a lot easier, gives you some more room. I'm taking off the air intake and the filter box. It's super easy to do, taking like 5 minutes, and like I said, it just gives me a lot more space to work with. Already got it off, so went ahead and pulled the air filter out, take a look at it. Got some residue from the PCV hose, but not a big deal, it'll live. All right, as expected, these connectors were a pain in the nuts, so I'll explain that here in a second. On the top of the coolant reservoir and the windshield washer, there were just two bolts on the top, 10 mil, super easy, and then it just slides up. This one here for the windshield washer sensor, fluid sensor, just gotta pull this red tab back, and then once you have it back, then you can press this down, slides off. And this one here for, I think this is actually the pump, maybe. Anyway, whatever this is, pull the red tab back, and then it just slides off. It does exactly, or works exactly like you would think it would looking at it, but it was just tight as shit, did not want to come off, so I had to use a screwdriver and fight it for a while. But anyway, now that I got it, sorry, weird jump cut there, but now that I've got that off, now I just have a little more mobility to move the tank around, less stuff to get pinched. Without disconnecting this hose here, I still can't fully remove it, but now that I've got a little more mobility, I will pour the coolant out of this here, and then I'll just tuck it up in the corner out of the way. All right, next thing is going to be the upper radiator hose. I already popped this one off here on the radiator side, and then over here on the motor side, I can take those two bolts out and remove that whole flange right there, but instead I'm just going to take off that hose fitting right there instead. Okay, we're getting to the fun now. So the fan cover had a 13 mil bolt either side, pops loose. You pop it up, but then it comes loose. Then I remembered you can't get it out until you take off the fan. So anyway, giant crescent wrench and a screwdriver. I wedged, let's see if I can get you to see it there. There's little holes in there. I wedged the screwdriver in that little hole there as I turned the nut with the crescent wrench. It is a left-hand thread. So to get this, oh, where's the screwdriver? Yeah, to get that off, you need to turn clockwise. So like I said, left-hand thread, off clockwise. I popped it loose, now I can unscrew the fan. Okay, you can tell it's been a little while since I've done this. Just now realizing that now that I have the upper radiator hose off, I can see the thermostat right there. So I am going to have to take that flange off anyway to get that off. But it's two 13 mil bolts, so no biggie. Okay, got that flange off. I took the thermostat out, looked at it, inspected it, all looks good. I do have another one, I'm going to go ahead and replace it. But for right now, I threw it back in there just to keep that hole covered. So the next thing is going to be taking off the serpentine belt, which is pretty simple to do. Put a 13 mil wrench on the idler pulley right there, lift up on it, and the belt will just slip off. always make sure to take a picture of your serpentine belt so you know what it looks like, so you know how to put it back on. Just a pro tip there. Okay, my bad, definitely don't do that. That is not an idler pulley. That is it down there. And you just put a 3/8 drive ratchet in that little hole right there. All right, serpentine was easy. Now both of these hoses need to come off. All right, those hoses came off easy. The bottom one I pushed down, and the top one I folded up there to keep track. And then this little electrical connector is easy to reach while I'm here. Pull the red tab back, squeeze the little black thing right there, slides right off. All right, so that little bracket, once I took the bolts loose, it was still hanging down in the way. It was just kind of sitting on that ledge there. Anyway, there's this little plastic connector that holds it on to this pipe here. So anyway, just unclamped it, folded it out of the way, make it a lot easier to work around. As you may have noticed, there's another little formed nut on that same peg sticking out right there. That is a 15 mil, and that will have to come off next. All right, next thing, the idler pulley here itself needs to come off. This is a 16. We just used a 15 on the last thing. Why did they design it to have a 16? I don't know, go fuck yourself, I guess. Ah, once again, hard to do with one hand. You know what, it's been one of those days, guys, okay? I promise you, I'm not completely retarded. Ugh. There we go. All right, so next I took off the bolts on either side of where this idler pulley was mounted. There's one on the top, one on the right, you can just see there, and there's one down below. Anyway, it's a little hard to see in there. Zoom out. Here are the bolts, and I can actually show you on the new part a little bit better. So there's a long one on top, the short one on the right, and another long one. This is the same as this one. This goes on the bottom. So anyway, it's exactly how it came off, and putting it back in the new one so I can see how it's gonna go back together. So based off of this, now we're talking about it, my guess is there's another one hiding right there. These were all 13 mil, by the way. My suspicion is that that's going to be one. That's probably going to be one, might be a different size, but anyway, lots of bolt holes, lots of bolts to remove. I remember this is the fun part from last time, is remembering where the hell all the bolts went. All right, so as you can see here, I got all of the bolts out, put them in their respective places on the new pump, and then the lower radiator hose was still connected. So I was like, oh, I'll go ahead and pull that while I'm down there. And as I was pulling on the lower radiator hose, the whole thing just fell off. So I think the gasket was just kind of stuck, and once I gave it a little tug, it just popped off and just about smacked me in the face. But anyway, that's what we got left. There's lots of gasket residue and just other gunk all around there, so I'll probably spend the next 15 minutes scrubbing that off. Be careful not to let anything get into the inlet and outlet, but just making it pretty, making sure it's going to seal on the next one. Okay, I actually spent probably like 20 or 30 minutes cleaning on it, but looks pretty good there. You can see there's still some texture right there, like visibly, but if you run your finger over it, it feels perfectly smooth. I've already done enough grinding on there. I've probably taken a few thou off. That's not a big deal, but I don't want to sit there and just absolutely grind on one spot, make it uneven. Like I said, I know it's smooth. I'm gonna go ahead and just run it. I wiped it down as best I could. Now it is time to very, very carefully install the new one. So I moved the bolts over to the old one, just get them out of the way. But gotta be careful as I'm doing this to not break my wrist when it swings, but also making sure I don't bump that gasket. So anyway, now just undoing everything I just did to this one in the exact opposite order. All right, new pump is in, bolts are tight. I did 20 foot-pounds from the reading that I've been able to find. It's kind of controversial as to the exact, well, not controversial, but a lot of misinformation as to what the correct torque spec is. And then there's a lot of debate over putting sealant around some of the longer threads or longer bolts. There, like I said, there's those two long ones there, and there's another couple long ones over there, about whether or not you're supposed to seal those. Some people say you do, some people say you don't, but the factory manual doesn't say anything about it, so I did not. But that said, the little flange that goes on that thing for the thermostat, I need to clean that up, and then I will put that on next. Quick little side note for this flange, there was some sort of gasket material on this before when I took it off, but it's not like an actual gasket, just some sort of weird sealant on it or something. So I put some RTV on it, just some super basic sealant. It's a metal on metal connection. It's kind of weird that it doesn't come with anything, but it is what it is. This should work. I tried not to put too much on because I do need to drive this in a couple hours, and I don't have all day to wait for a whole bunch of it to seal up. So. As you can tell, this is a different place on a different day. I had some stuff come up. I had to quit recording, so I decided to hurry up and throw it back together. So 2 things I'd like to point out. Once I had it all put together, I could not figure out why, after letting it warm up for a while, like I was monitoring the temperature gauge while I was putting coolant in, making sure I got the air bubbles out and everything. I could not figure out why, after hauling ass a mile down and back, getting it good and warm, temperature gauge, nothing. Couldn't figure it out. I had a light come on for the throttle body, which I had been messing with a little bit while I was there, but you know, that shouldn't have been it. It was the throttle body sensor, throttle body sensor. Anyway, turns out the thermostat sensor, if you forget to plug that in, it throws the same light as it does for a throttle body issue. So anyway, plug that in, worked just fine. Temperature gauge works exactly as it should. And then a couple days and about 50 miles later, the upper radiator hose popped off of that flange that you just saw. Jesus, if I could talk. Just saw me putting right where the thermostat goes. Don't know why. I thought I had it on tight. I thought I double checked it as I was putting it together, but for whatever reason, that popped off. Luckily, it just popped off as I was pulling into a gas station. So gave it 20 minutes to cool down, put the hose back on, good to go. And I was nervous about something like that happening, so I carried a couple gallons of coolant with me. Put one in, that was enough to get me home, so no big deal. Other than that, it's actually been a couple of weeks now. No leaks, no overheating. I've had to pull a little bit. It's been getting pretty warm lately. All good to go. So anyway, it was, from where you just saw where I was at last, there was nothing else to it. It was just undoing what you had seen me doing before. So anyway, pretty simple, very doable. It probably took me, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 hours. Not a hard job. Granted, I've done it before, but definitely something you can manage with some pretty basic tools, actually. So anyway, so that said, this is a great example of something that if my retired ass can do it, so can you. So pretty simple. Give it a shot.